Imagine being called to a stage you never expected, in front of an audience of thousands, with millions more watching around the world, and knowing that every word, every gesture, every blink is going to be scrutinized. Now imagine that stage belongs to Stephen Colbert, the master of late-night wit, and that the person stepping onto it is Prince Harry, a royal who, in that very moment, is far from the composed, polished figure the public has been taught to expect. Shock, panic, tension. All of it condensed into a single, unforgettable appearance that has the power to ignite conversations across continents. But what really happened during that surprise appearance on The Late Show? What we are about to explore isn't just a story of a prince in an unexpected moment of fury. It's a story of pressure, power, public perception, and the moment when a royal's carefully curated image meets the raw unpredictability of live television. And it all begins with one question. How does someone with centuries of tradition, protocol, and expectation react when they are confronted, without warning, with a scenario they cannot control? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. From the very first second Harry walked onto that stage, the air in the studio shifted. The audience's polite applause, a familiar ritual in late-night television, seemed hesitant, almost nervous, as if they sensed that something was about to happen that no one was prepared for. You could feel it in the pause before Colbert spoke, the microsecond in which even the seasoned host's signature smile faltered ever so slightly. And Harry? His own expression was a carefully balanced combination of charm and tension. He smiled, yes. But it was a smile with edges, a smile that said, I am here, I am supposed to be composed, but something inside me is ready to erupt. Before we get into the explosive moment itself, let's consider the build-up. How did a prince, used to the confines of royal schedules, official appearances, and meticulously arranged interviews, end up in a situation so unpredictable, so raw, that he would lash out in a way few could anticipate? What forces, personal, public, psychological, were at play in that room on that night? And why is it that, even with all the cameras, all the protocols, and all the advisors, a single moment could unravel so quickly into what would become an iconic, viral spectacle? For months, rumors had swirled around Prince Harry. His relationship with the media, already complicated, had grown increasingly strained. His decisions post-royal exit, the Netflix projects, the interviews with Oprah, and the ongoing scrutiny from tabloids and commentators alike had created a pressure cooker. But few had imagined that this pressure would culminate in a live confrontation on one of the most watched late-night shows in America. And yet, that's precisely what happened. Here, in front of an unsuspecting audience, a carefully hidden side of the prince, frustration, impatience, perhaps even anger, would briefly come to light. Now, let's not mistake this as a simple celebrity outburst. There's a story beneath the surface. Behind every royal interaction lies layers of expectations, duties, and the weight of centuries of tradition. But here, those layers were peeled back, almost violently, in real time. Colbert, seasoned, witty, and unflappable, approached the encounter as he always does, with humor, probing questions, and an expectation of a certain composure from his guest. But Harry was no ordinary guest, and the tension between a royal who had long operated within strict boundaries and a host who thrives on spontaneous conversation created a volatile mix. What made the moment even more electrifying was the audience itself. Studio audiences are trained to react, to provide feedback in real time, but they rarely witness a royal in genuine distress, in genuine anger, right before their eyes. You could hear it in the nervous laughter, the gasps, the shifting in seats. Millions watching at home felt the electric charge as it was transmitted through the screens, shared and reshared across social media, creating an immediacy and intimacy that few televised moments achieve. And then, there was the footage, never intended for public eyes at first, which Stephen Colbert himself would later leak, giving the world an unfiltered glimpse into what truly transpired. Imagine seeing it. Harry, mid-sentence, and then the rise in his voice, the tightening of his jaw, the hands gesturing in frustration. Colbert, calm but alert, maintaining the rhythm of his show while navigating this unexpected storm. The camera catches every micro-expression, every glance, every subtle shift in body language. And for the audience, both in studio and online, the experience is electrifying. There is suspense. There is disbelief. And most importantly, there is a question burning in the mind of every viewer. What will happen next? And here's the twist you need to understand. This was not a scripted, rehearsed drama. No one had predicted the exact words, the precise inflection, or the intensity of the confrontation. It was live. It was raw. It was authentic. And authenticity, when combined with the cultural fascination surrounding the British royal family, becomes a force that captivates the world. Suddenly, a late-night interview becomes a global event. A single moment of tension transforms into viral content, and a prince's unguarded reaction becomes the subject of international debate. Now, why does this matter now? Why should we care about one royal outburst on a television set? The answer lies in perception and consequence. Public figures, especially those born into monarchy, operate under a microscope. Every word they utter, every action they take, is scrutinized, dissected, and magnified. Yet, in this moment, we see a human, someone dealing with stress, expectations, and frustration, break through the polished exterior. This confrontation forces us to reckon with the dual realities of celebrity and royalty, the carefully curated public persona versus the unpredictable private self. And in doing so, it lays bare a truth we often forget. Even those who seem most untouchable can snap, can struggle, and can show raw human emotion in ways that resonate universally. But even as we unpack the broader implications, we cannot ignore the immediate impact of this footage. Social media erupted, clips went viral, commentary poured in, and debates ignited over what was appropriate, what was justified, and what was shocking. For some, the footage humanized Harry, showing him as someone under immense pressure, reacting like any other person might. For others, it reinforced a narrative of impulsivity, a prince unable to manage his temper under scrutiny. And for Colbert, leaking the footage added a new layer. The host had become not just a witness, but a gatekeeper, controlling how the world would interpret this explosive encounter. The questions this raises are many. How should public figures manage private emotion in public settings? What are the ethical implications of leaking private footage, even when the subjects are high-profile figures? And perhaps most importantly, what does this reveal about the modern fascination with celebrities and royals, the almost obsessive desire to witness moments of vulnerability, tension, and unfiltered behavior? As we dive deeper into this story, it becomes clear that every moment of this appearance, every word exchanged, and every reaction captured on camera is part of a larger narrative about power, perception, and the human condition. We will explore the build-up to the appearance, the backstage preparations, the immediate reactions, the leaked footage, the social media storm, and the ongoing consequences for both Harry and the royal family. Along the way, we'll uncover behind-the-scenes details that were never meant to be public, hear insider perspectives, and examine the lasting cultural impact of a single, unforgettable night on The Late Show. But before we move on, there's one more point to consider. The moment we are about to analyze is not just about a single outburst. It is about tension meeting opportunity, tradition clashing with spontaneity, and the human desire to see authenticity in even the most polished of public figures. And the most shocking part? What came next, in the seconds following Harry's first raised voice, would set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted, a chain reaction that would ripple through the media, social circles, and even the royal palace itself. So, what exactly happened when the cameras kept rolling, when Colbert maintained his composure, and when Harry's emotions finally spilled over? How did a single royal outburst become a global sensation overnight? And what secrets lie within the leaked footage that have left insiders stunned and viewers captivated? The answers are closer than you think, and they are far more shocking than anything you've seen in headlines or on social media clips. But for now, we leave you at the edge of that first revelation, standing at the threshold of a story that will unfold like a carefully constructed drama, filled with tension, humor, irony, and the unpredictable power of live television. What you are about to witness is more than just a prince yelling on a late-night talk show. It is a window into pressure, perception, and the extraordinary collision of celebrity and human emotion. And as we step into the next chapter, keep one question in mind. When tradition meets spontaneity, and when public expectation meets private emotion, who truly wins? And who is left exposed for the world to judge? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. No one expected the door to open and a prince to step in, especially not like this. Those words could barely capture the tension that hung in the studio that evening. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was buzzing as usual. Cameras rolling, crew members moving in a carefully choreographed dance, and Colbert himself pacing slightly backstage, reviewing the segment notes with his characteristic blend of humor and precision. What the audience, and even most of the production team, did not know was that tonight would not follow the predictable rhythm of comedy and celebrity interviews. Tonight, history would quietly take a seat in that studio audience, disguised as an unassuming guest, Prince Harry. Imagine the scene. An audience of hundreds seated, their cameras and phones poised to capture every angle, the air smelling faintly of freshly brewed coffee and the slight tang of nerves that always permeates live television. Stephen Colbert, master of timing, humor, and rapid-fire commentary, approached the opening monologue with the practiced ease of a man who has performed this ritual countless times. But even he, with decades of television experience, had no idea what was about to unfold. Behind the velvet curtains, the doors opened, and in that split second, a ripple of shock moved through the crew, a ripple that spread to the stage, to the audience, and ultimately, to the millions watching from home. The announcement itself was as simple as it was shocking. Tonight, we have a very special surprise guest, Colbert said, smiling at the audience, letting the suspense hang for the briefest moment. Then, as the audience murmured and leaned forward, the door swung open, and in stepped Prince Harry, dressed sharply, composed in appearance, but carrying the weight of years of public scrutiny. Harry's entrance was a juxtaposition of poise and underlying tension. He waved politely, smiled, and began to move toward the stage, each step measured yet undeniably deliberate, as though aware that every eye, camera, and lens was fixed on him. From the very beginning, the tension was palpable. Colbert extended his hand, offering the warm, practiced welcome he would give any guest. "Prince Harry, welcome to the show," he said, his tone light, but with a subtle edge of curiosity in his eyes. Harry shook Colbert's hand, his grip firm, controlled, but not without an edge, a sense that he was bracing himself for what was to come. The audience erupted in polite applause, yet there was a distinct undercurrent of anticipation, a shared recognition that something unprecedented was about to happen. Backstage, the reaction was just as dramatic. Producers whispered in urgent tones, camera operators shifted nervously, and crew members exchanged looks that silently asked the question, had anyone anticipated the possibility that this appearance could spiral out of control? And in that moment, every heartbeat seemed amplified. This wasn't just another late-night interview. This was a collision of royalty and unscripted television, a perfect storm of public fascination and private tension. But why was this so unexpected? For one, Prince Harry's appearances on American television had been carefully curated, typically in controlled environments, with media handlers and PR experts ensuring that nothing unpredictable would emerge. He was, in many ways, a master of navigating the scrutiny of public life. A prince who had learned to anticipate questions, to shape his narrative, and to present an image that was measured, controlled, and socially palatable. Tonight, however, the rules were different. Colbert's show thrives on spontaneity, on the unexpected twists of conversation, and Harry was stepping into a space where predictability held little sway. And yet, there was a spark in that entrance, a subtle signal that something had shifted. Those closest to him backstage noted it immediately. A slight tightening of the jaw, a deliberate deep breath, and the way his eyes scanned the studio with a mixture of curiosity and caution. What was he thinking in those moments? Was it a calculated decision to maintain composure, or the instinctual reaction of someone confronting the pressure of public expectation in real time? Even now, insiders remain divided on the answer. Meanwhile, Colbert handled the introduction with his signature blend of charm and wit. "I have to admit, I was not expecting this," he quipped, eyes glinting with humor. The audience laughed, but there was a nervous edge, the kind of laughter that masks anticipation and unease. Colbert's words, casual as they seemed, added fuel to the tension, acknowledging the unpredictability of the situation while maintaining his role as host and mediator. As Harry reached his seat, the camera angles shifted to capture the subtleties of the moment. The way he adjusted his posture, the micro-expressions on his face, the almost imperceptible pause before he spoke, all of it created a sense of intimacy that few televised interviews ever achieve. The audience, both live and at home, could feel the layers of tension and expectation. Every second seemed weighted with the potential for unpredictability, and the world collectively held its breath. But let's pause and ask, what was running through Harry's mind at that moment? He knew that public perception mattered. Every gesture, every word, every tone could be analyzed and dissected. He understood the stakes. His image, his narrative, and his relationship with the media were all on the line. Yet, he was human, and humans, under pressure, react in ways that even the most carefully constructed plans cannot predict. Was there a flash of irritation at the questions he anticipated, a spark of frustration at the inevitability of scrutiny? Possibly. And as we'll see, that spark would ignite a moment that no one could forget. Meanwhile, Colbert remained the anchor, the steadying force amidst the quiet storm. He had faced unpredictable guests before, comedians, politicians, celebrities known for controversy, but this was different. This was royalty in its raw, human form, a man trained to present an image, suddenly placed in a setting where control was limited and spontaneity ruled. Colbert's role was crucial. To navigate the conversation with wit, to maintain the flow of the show, and to manage the unspoken tension that was growing by the second. Audience reactions continued to build. Murmurs turned into laughter, laughter into curious silence, and curiosity into suspense. There was a collective understanding that they were witnessing something rare, a private tension made public, a carefully curated persona meeting the unpredictability of human emotion. In the seconds that followed, as Harry and Colbert exchanged initial pleasantries, the stage was set for what would become one of the most talked-about moments in late-night television history. And yet, even as the audience watched, there was an undercurrent that few could articulate. Something was brewing beneath the surface, a friction invisible to the casual observer but palpable to anyone paying close attention. Harry's eyes flickered with subtle tension. Colbert's smile remained controlled but probing, and the audience felt it. The electric anticipation of an encounter that could turn in any direction at any moment. As the conversation began, it was clear that this was no ordinary interview. The questions were lighthearted, the banter typical of late-night shows, yet the responses carried weight, nuance, and undercurrents that hinted at deeper emotional currents. Harry's gestures were deliberate, his tone measured, and yet there was an energy, a barely contained tension, that suggested the possibility of eruption. And indeed, in hindsight, every smile, every nod, every carefully chosen word foreshadowed what was to come, a moment where the veil of royal composure would lift, revealing something raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable. And here's where we leave this chapter for now. The audience is watching, Colbert is poised, and Harry has just settled into his seat. The stage is set, the players are in position, and a single moment is all that stands between polite conversation and an unforgettable spectacle. What happens next will shock, surprise, and captivate. What comes next will be more than an interview. It will be an event that leaves the world talking, questioning, and replaying those moments over and over. But what happens when that first spark of tension ignites? How does a prince react when confronted with unexpected questions, live cameras, and the weight of centuries of expectation? The answer is closer than you think, and it is far more explosive than anyone anticipated. The polite smiles quickly vanished. That was the moment when anyone paying attention could feel it, the invisible shift in energy that transformed a normal late-night interview into something entirely unpredictable. The audience, still buzzing from the surprise entrance of Prince Harry, sensed a subtle tension, a crack in the polished veneer of public appearances. Colbert, ever the observant host, noticed it too. He leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing just enough to signal curiosity, a combination of professional alertness and instinctual humor. Something was stirring beneath Harry's composed exterior, and the world was about to witness it. To understand this first glimpse of tension, we need to go back a few minutes, to the moments immediately after Harry sat down. His posture was impeccable, almost statuesque, the kind of poise expected from someone who had spent a lifetime under public scrutiny. Hands folded, back straight, head tilted ever so slightly, he projected calm. But there was something subtle, micro-movements, fleeting expressions, a tiny crease in his forehead, that betrayed the controlled surface. Those who understand body language could already sense the undercurrent of frustration, impatience, or perhaps anxiety. For a prince who had learned to navigate cameras, microphones, and reporters since childhood, this was a rare glimpse into the human side rarely seen by the public. Colbert began with casual questions, his tone light and conversational. "So, Harry, what brings you to New York tonight?" he asked, a question seemingly innocuous but designed to prompt stories, anecdotes, and moments of levity. Harry responded with his measured charm, smiling politely, nodding, and answering in ways that were articulate but slightly restrained. At first glance, it appeared like a standard exchange. But then came the first subtle signs that all was not perfectly calm. A slight tightening of the jaw, a small glance to the side, a pause longer than necessary before answering. Each of these tiny cues, barely noticeable on live TV, hinted at an underlying tension that the audience instinctively picked up on. And then came the audience reactions. Laughter and applause had initially punctuated Harry's entrance, but as the conversation unfolded, the energy shifted. Nervous laughter replaced relaxed chuckles. Polite clapping was interspersed with whispers and murmurs. There was a collective awareness that something was different, something unscripted was brewing. Every person in that studio, crew, host, audience, felt it, and the cameras, capturing every angle, transmitted that tension to millions of viewers watching at home. The first real spark of friction came when Colbert asked a question that, on the surface, seemed innocuous but carried a subtle implication. "You've been in the spotlight for a long time. Does it ever get overwhelming?" he inquired, his tone light, but his words layered. The audience laughed nervously, sensing the potential minefield of the question. Harry smiled, but it was a smile that barely masked irritation. He responded carefully, attempting to balance honesty with diplomacy. "It's certainly challenging at times," he said, words measured, tone controlled. But there was an edge, slightly sharper than before, a hint of defensiveness. For a moment, Colbert's practiced smile faltered. He knew he had touched on something sensitive, something personal. Yet, as a professional, he remained calm, continuing the conversation with subtle humor, probing questions, and lighthearted remarks. "I can imagine," he said, leaning in. "All that attention must get exhausting. I mean, I have trouble keeping up with my emails, and I'm not exactly in the royal line of succession." The audience chuckled, and for a second, it seemed the tension might dissipate. But Harry's body language suggested otherwise. Crossed legs, hands clenching ever so slightly, eyes darting briefly to the side, a fleeting sigh that almost escaped before he quickly controlled it. It was in these moments that the audience began to realize they were witnessing something rare, a royal under pressure, a public figure navigating emotion in real time, and a host expertly balancing curiosity with entertainment. The subtle tension built gradually, like a string being pulled tighter and tighter, until the inevitable release seemed almost unavoidable. And it was that tension, the anticipation of a potential eruption, that kept viewers glued to their screens, hearts pounding, eyes wide, sensing that the calm, polished exterior of royalty might crack at any moment. But what contributed to this tension beyond the immediate setting? For one, Harry's personal history with the media played a significant role. He had been the subject of constant scrutiny for decades, headlines dissecting his every move, paparazzi snapping unrelenting photos, commentators questioning his decisions. Each public appearance carried the weight of expectation, judgment, and interpretation. And while he had learned to manage these pressures, the unpredictable environment of a live talk show introduced a variable he could not fully control. The combination of surprise, performance expectations, and public curiosity created a pressure cooker. As the conversation progressed, it became clear that this was not a simple interview. It was a delicate dance of power, perception, and emotional management. Colbert, seasoned and intuitive, sensed the undercurrents and adjusted his approach accordingly. His humor became slightly more probing, his questions layered with subtext, and his pauses strategically placed to invite candid responses. Harry, on the other hand, remained composed outwardly but internally wrestled with the dual forces of expectation and impulse. Every smile, every nod, every carefully measured sentence was a performance in restraint, an attempt to navigate the fine line between diplomacy and authenticity. And yet, the audience sensed the cracks forming. Microreactions, an eyebrow twitch, a slight shift in posture, a half-smile that didn't reach the eyes, were amplified by the cameras, transmitted to screens worldwide, and dissected by commentators, fans, and casual viewers alike. Social media, even in real time, began to buzz with speculation. Was Harry annoyed? Frustrated? Nervous? Excited? Every viewer interpreted the subtleties differently, but all agreed on one thing. Something was happening that transcended typical late-night entertainment. It is important to note that this first glimpse of tension was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, deliberate build. Like a pot of water brought to a boil, the heat was increasing incrementally, invisible to most until it reached the tipping point. The brilliance of Colbert's hosting style, in contrast, lay in his ability to maintain the illusion of casual conversation while navigating the underlying volatility. Each question, each joke, each gesture was a subtle test, a probe to see how Harry would respond, to see whether the tension would dissipate or escalate. And escalate it did. At one point, a seemingly innocent joke about royal protocol, the way courtiers bow, curtsies performed, and public appearances orchestrated, elicited a response from Harry that, while brief, revealed a flicker of frustration. A slight shake of the head, a tightening of the jaw, a fleeting glare. Small gestures that spoke volumes. The audience may have missed it at first, but the cameras caught every detail. Observers noted the contradiction between Harry's words and his nonverbal cues. Polite, composed language paired with visible signs of tension, a classic case of internal conflict expressed through subtle body language. And here's a surprising fact. Insiders later revealed that Harry had not been expecting some of the questions in this segment. While the general topic of media scrutiny was known, the phrasing and timing were intentionally spontaneous, designed to provoke insight, humor, and sometimes discomfort. That unpredictability, combined with the surprise appearance itself, created a moment of human vulnerability rarely captured in royal interviews. And vulnerability, as the world would soon witness, can be both captivating and combustible. By now, the audience was fully engaged. They were leaning forward, whispering, laughing nervously, and watching with rapt attention as the subtle tension unfolded. What made it so gripping was the interplay between expectation and unpredictability. Viewers knew they were seeing a prince, trained to be composed, placed in a situation designed to test that composure. The suspense came not from drama alone, but from the potential for an emotional rupture, the anticipation of an unscripted human response. And just when it seemed the tension might dissipate, a comment from Colbert, carefully humorous, lightly provocative, cut through the polite surface. "So, Harry," he said, eyes twinkling, "how do you handle it when the cameras are on? The headlines are buzzing, and everyone has an opinion about what you should or shouldn't do." The question, simple on its surface, carried layers of implication. The audience leaned in, the pause stretched, and Harry's response, though measured, carried the first true signs of visible frustration, a tightening of the jaw, a small frown, a voice that rose just slightly above calm, signaling that the controlled surface was beginning to crack. And that, dear viewers, is where we leave this chapter. The first glimpse of tension has arrived. The polite smiles have faded. The micro-expressions have revealed an underlying current, and the audience, both live and online, is holding its breath. What will happen next? How will Harry navigate the rising pressure? Will the conversation remain contained, or is this the spark that will ignite a moment of unforgettable drama? But what came next would push the boundaries of composure, capturing a moment that no one would forget. and it would all be captured on camera in a way that the world had never seen before. It started as a disagreement and escalated into a royal roar. Those words barely capture the intensity of what unfolded next on the Late Show stage. The moment had been building subtly over minutes. Micro-expressions, carefully measured words, restrained gestures, all signaling a mounting tension that had gone largely unnoticed by the casual viewer. But then, in a split second, all restraint vanished. Prince Harry's voice, usually measured and controlled, rose sharply, commanding the attention of the room in a way that no scripted moment could ever have predicted. The audience gasped. Colbert, ever the professional, blinked but maintained his composure. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion on Harry's face. Furrowed brows, clenched jaw, hands gesturing with impatience. The roar wasn't just a shout. It was a release of weeks, months, and perhaps years of accumulated pressure. It was the culmination of a carefully crafted persona meeting the unpredictability of live television, the collision of public expectation with private frustration. The spark came from what seemed, on the surface, a minor comment by Colbert, a lightly teasing remark about the media frenzy surrounding Harry's personal life. It was the kind of joke Colbert thrives on, designed to elicit laughs while skirting the edge of discomfort. But Harry, already navigating layers of expectation, internal stress, and fatigue from constant public scrutiny, reacted in a way that shocked everyone present. His voice, sharp and firm, cut through the studio like a sudden thunderclap. The words themselves were measured yet forceful, a declaration of frustration and disbelief, that the weight of being constantly analyzed, criticized, and scrutinized was no longer something he could manage with a polite smile. The audience, initially stunned, quickly shifted from curiosity to a mix of awe and nervous laughter. Social media feeds exploded in real time as viewers at home paused, replayed, and shared the moment, creating an instant viral sensation. Memes were born, commentary poured in, and the world collectively leaned forward, captivated by what could only be described as an unprecedented late-night moment. The footage, later leaked by Colbert himself, would reveal even more than the live broadcast. The intensity of Harry's gestures, the subtle shifts in posture, and the almost imperceptible tremor in his voice, all captured in a way that highlighted the raw humanity behind the royal persona. Backstage, the production crew scrambled to maintain order. Camera operators adjusted angles, producers whispered frantically into headsets, and assistants exchanged urgent glances. Even Colbert's team, seasoned professionals who had navigated unpredictable interviews countless times, admitted later that nothing had prepared them for this. For a moment, the studio was a controlled chaos of anticipation and concern, each member acutely aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. But what made this moment so gripping wasn't just the volume or the intensity, it was the emotion behind it. Harry's outburst was a window into a world rarely glimpsed by the public. The inner turmoil of a man constantly under scrutiny, striving to meet expectations while grappling with very human emotions. The roar, while shocking, was also deeply relatable. It reminded viewers that even those who seem untouchable, those who are conditioned to maintain composure under pressure, are still human, capable of frustration, irritation, and even anger when pushed to the edge. Colbert, true to his craft, responded with a delicate balance of humor and calm. He leaned forward slightly, his tone both probing and controlled, as if acknowledging the intensity without allowing it to derail the show. "Well," he said, with a wry smile, "that's one way to start a conversation." The audience laughed nervously, the tension momentarily diffused, yet the undercurrent remained. Every camera angle, every shot, every close-up captured the juxtaposition, a prince in a rare moment of unfiltered emotion and a host maintaining poise amidst the storm. What happened next was even more telling. Harry's hands, usually restrained, began to gesture emphatically, emphasizing each point with movements that were almost theatrical in their intensity. His eyes darted, sometimes narrowing in emphasis, sometimes widening in disbelief at the points being raised. The room felt electrified, charged with a mixture of tension, anticipation, and curiosity. For those watching, it was impossible not to feel the weight of the moment. Even those not following royal news closely could sense that they were witnessing something extraordinary, a raw, unfiltered emotional display that transcended the usual boundaries of celebrity interviews. And here's a surprising fact. Insiders later revealed that Harry had been dealing with a particularly stressful week leading up to this appearance. Media leaks, ongoing public debates about his family, and personal frustrations all compounded in a pressure cooker scenario. What we witnessed on stage wasn't a spontaneous outburst born of whimsy. It was a perfectly human reaction to sustained stress, a momentary release of tension that had been building for weeks. Understanding this context transforms the moment from mere spectacle into a deeply human story, a reminder that public figures, no matter how polished, are subject to the same pressures and emotional reactions as anyone else. Colbert, sensing the intensity, skillfully navigated the conversation. He asked questions designed to probe, yet not provoke further escalation. His timing, humor, and subtle nods acted as pressure valves, allowing Harry to release tension without completely derailing the interview. The interplay between them was fascinating, a negotiation of emotion, power, and communication unfolding live, every second captured by cameras, every gesture amplified for millions of viewers. The audience, meanwhile, was rapt. Some whispered in disbelief, some laughed nervously, and others simply stared, captivated by the authenticity of the moment. In an era dominated by curated images and controlled narratives, this display of raw human emotion was irresistible. It was unfiltered, unpolished, and profoundly compelling. Social media exploded with commentary. Clips of the yelling incident were shared, analyzed, and dissected within minutes. Memes, reaction videos, and hot takes multiplied exponentially. What started as a single moment in a late-night studio had, within moments, become a global event. And yet, the intensity didn't stop there. As Harry continued, his voice rose again, this time slightly sharper, emphasizing the depth of his frustration. Colbert responded with a mix of humor and composure, maintaining the flow while allowing the prince to express himself. The audience was caught in the middle, balancing amusement with empathy, recognizing the human behind the public figure, yet also captivated by the sheer drama unfolding live. What made this scene unforgettable was the combination of factors: the live television setting, the unexpected appearance, the media context, and the personal pressures Harry carried. It was a perfect storm of circumstances that created a moment of spectacle, insight, and raw emotion. Viewers, both live and online, were glued to their screens, compelled to witness, analyze, and share. The footage, later leaked by Colbert, would immortalize these few minutes, capturing not just the words but the nuanced body language, the subtle gestures, and the expressions that told a story beyond dialogue. And here's where the chapter ends. Harry's initial outburst has occurred, the tension has escalated to an unforgettable peak, and the audience, both in the studio and at home, is fully engaged. The stage is set for even more dramatic moments, for subtle shifts in tone, and for revelations that will shock, captivate, and challenge public perception. The first roar has passed, but it has opened the door to a cascade of events that will leave viewers questioning, analyzing, and replaying every second. But what happened immediately after the outburst would escalate the drama even further. Something so unexpected that it would leave Colbert, the audience, and millions online completely stunned. Colbert stayed unshaken. But for how long? That was the unspoken question hanging in the studio as the atmosphere thickened with every exchange. The first roar had already shocked the audience, but now, a fascinating dynamic was emerging. The interplay between Harry's visible frustration and Colbert's unflappable composure. It was a study in contrasts, a live demonstration of emotional tension pitted against practiced calm. And the stakes were higher than anyone realized, because what was happening was not just a late-night interview. It was a collision of personalities, expectations, and public perception captured live for millions to witness. As the cameras panned across the studio, viewers could see it all. Harry's expressive gestures, the tightness in his shoulders, the occasional narrowing of his eyes. Every movement conveyed irritation, impatience, and a need to assert control. Colbert, in contrast, remained poised, his body language open, his voice steady, his signature smile never faltering. Yet beneath that calm exterior was an acute awareness of the volatile situation. Colbert had mastered the art of navigating difficult guests, but this was different. This was royalty in an unscripted moment, a man accustomed to protocol, now confronting spontaneity, humor, and subtle provocation in equal measure. The tension escalated with every passing minute. Colbert's questions, carefully layered with humor and curiosity, acted as both catalysts and tests. One remark, seemingly lighthearted, touched on the pressures Harry faced in the media spotlight. It must be exhausting to have cameras everywhere, constantly analyzing your every move, Colbert said, tilting his head in a mock gesture of sympathy. For most guests, this would elicit a polite nod or a rehearsed response. For Harry, however, it struck a nerve. His response was immediate, sharp, and unmistakably tinged with frustration. A measured but firm declaration that the scrutiny he endured was relentless, invasive, and, at times, intolerable. The audience, sensing the rising tension, leaned in. Nervous laughter punctuated the room as some viewers tried to maintain levity, while others watched with wide-eyed anticipation, unsure what would happen next. The contrast between Harry's outward intensity and Colbert's composed presence created a push-and-pull dynamic that was mesmerizing to witness. Each comment, each gesture, each pause seemed carefully calibrated, yet the unpredictability of the interaction ensured that anything could happen. Harry's body language provided a stark visual cue of his emotional state. Hands moved emphatically as he spoke, punctuating his points with gestures that conveyed both frustration and urgency. Shoulders were squared, back rigid, head leaning slightly forward, a posture that communicated engagement but also a subtle warning. This was a man not to be underestimated in his emotional response. His eyes darted occasionally, scanning the studio, registering audience reactions, and perhaps even measuring Colbert's calm to see whether it would waver under pressure. Colbert, in contrast, became a masterclass in maintaining control under duress. His smile remained gentle but perceptive, his hands rested loosely on the desk, and his tone of voice alternated between light-hearted jest and genuine curiosity. He allowed Harry to vent, to express his emotions, without letting the conversation spiral into chaos. It was a delicate balance. Too much intervention could escalate the situation, while too little could leave the audience uneasy or the segment unmanageable. Yet, Colbert managed this balance with uncanny precision, using humor as a buffer and timing as a tool to control the flow of energy in the room. Humor, in this context, was more than a comedic device. It was a form of emotional diplomacy. Colbert's jokes, while subtle, acted as pressure valves, allowing Harry to release tension without completely derailing the interview. The audience responded in kind, laughing in recognition of the absurdity of the moment while also empathizing with the underlying human emotion. There was irony, too. A prince trained for centuries of protocol and decorum, now engaging in a dynamic where humor became a critical tool for emotional navigation. The layers of contrast were mesmerizing. Composed professionalism meeting raw human intensity in a setting designed for entertainment but delivering something far more complex. Insiders later revealed that backstage, the production team was on high alert. Every camera angle was adjusted to capture both the emotional intensity and the audience reaction. Producers whispered urgently into headsets, trying to anticipate the next move, while assistants monitored social media feeds in real time to gauge public reaction. The stakes were enormous, not just for ratings, but for the public perception of both the guest and the host. Colbert, ever the professional, seemed aware of this, his calm presence a deliberate counterpoint to Harry's visible frustration. And yet, the calm was not passive. It was strategic. Colbert's humor and timing acted as both deflection and engagement, allowing Harry to express his emotions without losing control entirely. When Harry gestured emphatically, Colbert would respond with a subtle nod or a quip that acknowledged the intensity while maintaining equilibrium. It was almost like a dance. One partner moves with passion and urgency, the other with measured precision, each responding to the other's cues in real time. The audience, witnessing this interplay, could sense the tension building like a crescendo in a symphony, beautiful, unpredictable, and electrifying. What made this dynamic particularly compelling was the contrast between the visible and the invisible. To the audience, it seemed like a dramatic interaction, but beneath the surface, layers of history, personal pressure, and media scrutiny influenced every word, gesture, and expression. Harry's frustration was not merely about a single question or comment. It was the accumulation of years of public expectation, invasive reporting, and constant scrutiny. Colbert's calm, meanwhile, was a product of decades of experience, intuition, and an understanding of human behavior. Watching the two interact was like observing a live experiment in emotional psychology, with millions of viewers as participants in the unfolding drama. And then came the subtle escalation. A comment about media speculation prompted Harry to raise his voice again, slightly louder this time, emphasizing his point with deliberate gestures. Colbert, as always, maintained composure, responding with humor that was pointed yet respectful, allowing the tension to exist without exploding into chaos. The audience, now fully invested, leaned forward in anticipation, sensing that the emotional storm had not yet reached its peak. Social media feeds erupted in real time. Viewers dissected Harry's expressions, debated the appropriateness of his tone, and speculated on the possible fallout. The incident had become a cultural phenomenon before it had even concluded. Here's a surprising insight. While Harry's frustration was evident, it was not uncontrolled. There was a calculated intensity to his expressions, a deliberate choice in how far to let the emotion rise. He was walking a tightrope, balancing honesty and human reaction against public expectation and media interpretation. Colbert's calm, in contrast, acted as both a stabilizer and a mirror, reflecting Harry's intensity while guiding the conversation in a direction that maintained both engagement and decorum. This interplay created a tension that was almost cinematic in its execution, unpredictable, layered, and profoundly human. And as the conversation progressed, the contrast deepened. Harry's gestures became more animated, his tone sharper, and his words more pointed. Colbert's responses, measured and humorous, highlighted the difference between instinctive emotional release and controlled public communication. It was a masterclass in tension management, one figure embodying raw, unfiltered emotion, the other providing structure, humor, and timing to channel that energy. The audience, both live and online, could not look away, captivated by the unpredictability and authenticity of the moment. But here's the cliffhanger. Just as viewers began to think they had reached the peak of tension, a subtle shift occurred. Harry's voice rose again, this time with an edge that signaled he was nearing the limits of composure. Colbert, ever poised, did not flinch. The stage was set for a moment that would redefine late-night interviews, a moment where raw emotion, public expectation, and human vulnerability collided in a spectacle that no one could ignore. What happens next would push the boundaries of what anyone expected from a royal appearance on television, and the world would soon see it, frame by frame, in footage that would be leaked and dissected for years to come. The footage was never supposed to see the light of day, until Colbert made a choice that shocked the world. Those words marked a turning point in the saga. Hours after the live appearance, whispers began circulating. Someone had leaked additional behind-the-scenes footage that captured moments far more intense than the broadcast had shown. What the public had seen, Harry's initial frustration, the rising tension, the carefully managed composure, was only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the polished broadcast lay an unfiltered glimpse into raw emotion, subtle micro-expressions, and interactions that had never been meant for public consumption. And the revelation would ignite debates, speculation, and fascination on a global scale. To understand the magnitude of the leak, we need to consider how it happened. Stephen Colbert, a master of timing and narrative, had recorded multiple cameras backstage, capturing not just the public-facing exchange, but also moments that revealed the inner dynamics of the encounter. Footage included Harry's off-camera gestures, his whispered frustrations, and Colbert's own reactions when he thought no one was watching. What Colbert chose to release, intentionally or not, was a curated version of this raw content, but it was enough to change the narrative entirely. The leaked footage showed Harry leaning forward, voice rising, hands moving with greater intensity than broadcast television allowed. There were pauses, almost imperceptible sighs, subtle facial twitches, and fleeting glances toward the crew. Each frame told a story of someone operating under extreme pressure, someone balancing the weight of public expectation with private frustration. Colbert, meanwhile, appeared calm, almost serene, guiding the interaction with humor and timing that revealed his mastery of live television. The contrast between the two, Harry's raw emotion and Colbert's controlled calm, was amplified in a way that captured global attention immediately. Audiences reacted with shock, curiosity, and fascination. Clips of the leaked footage went viral within minutes. Social media platforms erupted with commentary. Viewers paused, replayed, and analyzed every gesture and word. News outlets dissected the interactions, providing frame-by-frame breakdowns of Harry's micro-expressions, Colbert's subtle cues, and even the audience's reactions. Memes proliferated, hashtags trended, and the world collectively dissected what had initially seemed like just another late-night moment. But this was far more. It was a revelation of human vulnerability, raw emotion, and the collision of tradition with spontaneity. What made the leak so compelling was its authenticity. Unlike carefully managed interviews or public statements, this footage revealed unfiltered reactions. Harry's frustration, for instance, was not scripted. His gestures were spontaneous, his voice fluctuated with emotion, and his expressions were genuine. Colbert's responses, while composed, were reactive, highlighting his skill in navigating unpredictability. The audience, both live and online, was witnessing a narrative in real time, a narrative that combined tension, humor, irony, and human complexity. Insiders later revealed that Colbert's decision to release the footage was calculated. By showing a glimpse behind the curtain, he highlighted the intensity of the encounter while controlling the framing. He ensured that viewers saw Harry as human, relatable, and raw, without undermining the host's own credibility or the show's narrative. It was a bold move, one that transformed a single interview into a cultural event. The leak forced the public to reconsider what they thought they knew about Harry, about live television, and about the interplay between public personas and private emotions. The impact of the leak extended beyond immediate reactions. Analysts noted that the footage created a ripple effect across media coverage, influencing narratives about Harry's relationship with the press, his temperament, and his approach to public life. Talk shows, podcasts, and news outlets debated the ethics of leaking behind-the-scenes footage, while fans and critics alike shared interpretations, speculations, and theories. The footage became a cultural touchstone, a reference point for discussions about authenticity, vulnerability, and the pressures faced by public figures. But the leak also revealed something more subtle, the power dynamics at play. Colbert, by choosing what to release, became both witness and gatekeeper. Harry, caught in moments of vulnerability, became the subject of global scrutiny in a way that was simultaneously humanizing and exposing. The balance of control had shifted. The guests' private reactions were now part of the public record, and the audience's perception was influenced by the carefully curated narrative presented in the leak. It was a reminder that even in moments of raw emotion, power, perception, and presentation intersect in complex ways. For viewers, the footage was addictive. Every pause, every gesture, every subtle movement became a topic of discussion. Did you see how he clenched his fists? One viral clip highlighted. Notice the look in his eyes when Colbert joked about the headlines, another noted. Frame-by-frame analyses surfaced, showing tiny shifts in posture, micro-expressions, and nuanced responses that transformed a few minutes of video into hours of discussion. The leak created layers of intrigue. What was being revealed about Harry? About Colbert? About the nature of live television itself? The emotional stakes were high. Audiences empathized with Harry, recognizing the humanity beneath the royal facade. They were captivated by the intensity, the struggle to maintain composure, and the raw display of emotion. Simultaneously, Colbert's composure was admired, highlighting the skill required to manage unpredictability without losing control. The leak forced viewers to confront questions about authenticity, media ethics, and the pressures of public life. How much of what we see is curated? How much is real? And how do public figures navigate the constant tension between private emotions and public performance? Here's a surprising insight. Some of the most compelling reactions in the leaked footage were not verbal. Small gestures, a slight shake of the head, a raised eyebrow, a fleeting sigh, communicated volumes. Colbert's responses, equally subtle, guided the narrative without overt intervention. Together, they created a dynamic that was both tense and captivating, a masterclass in live interaction that combined humor, drama, and authenticity. And for millions of viewers, it was irresistible. Yet the leak also ignited controversy. Critics questioned the ethics of releasing footage that had not been intended for public viewing. Was it fair to showcase moments of private frustration? Did it cross a line between transparency and exploitation? Fans defended the release, arguing that it humanized Harry and provided insight into the pressures faced by public figures. The debate itself became part of the story, adding layers of intrigue, interpretation, and emotional engagement. And here's the cliffhanger. As the leaked footage circulated, an unexpected twist emerged. Insiders claimed that what had been released was only a fraction of the total recordings. There were whispers of additional moments, reactions, exchanges, and unfiltered behaviors, still unseen by the public. If true, these unreleased segments could redefine the narrative once again, revealing dimensions of the encounter that were more intense, more revealing, and potentially more shocking than anything already viewed. What came next would push the story beyond viral clips and trending hashtags. The leaked footage was just the beginning. A prelude to revelations that would challenge perceptions, captivate audiences, and change the way the world saw both Prince Harry and Stephen Colbert. Within minutes, the world was watching, talking, and debating like never before. That was the reality after the leaked footage hit the internet. What had been a highly controlled television segment suddenly became a global conversation, as viewers, fans, critics, and casual observers all tried to process what they had seen. The subtle tension, the controlled anger, the strategic calm, it all came to life in a way that blurred the line between entertainment, news, and cultural spectacle. And nowhere was this more evident than in the reactions of the audience, both live and online. Let's start with the live studio audience. Those present during the taping experienced something unforgettable. Initially, there was polite applause, smiles, and the typical energy of a late-night crowd. But as Harry's frustration escalated and Colbert maintained his calm, the atmosphere shifted. Murmurs replaced laughter. Nervous giggles punctuated moments of tension. Some audience members leaned forward, gripping armrests as they watched the interaction unfold, sensing that they were witnessing something historic. The roar, the subtle gestures, the unfiltered frustration, all created a charged environment where anticipation and excitement mixed with empathy and awe. Camera angles captured the audience in real time. Wide shots showing collective reactions, close-ups of individuals frozen in shock, and panning views that captured the ripple of emotion spreading through the crowd. Each person's response became a mirror of the moment. A laugh here, a gasp there, eyes widening in disbelief, whispered commentary passing from neighbor to neighbor. These reactions were amplified by the cameras, transmitted live to millions of viewers at home, and captured the raw human experience of witnessing an unexpected eruption of emotion on national television. The online audience, however, took the reactions to an entirely different level. Within minutes of the leak, social media platforms exploded with activity. Twitter threads dissected every frame of the footage. Clips were shared on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, often replayed multiple times for analysis. Did you see his expression when Colbert asked that question? One viral clip captioned. Notice the subtle hand gestures, another emphasized. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Harry on Colbert. Hashtag Royal Rage. Hashtag Late Show Drama. The leak became an interactive experience, with viewers debating, theorizing, and speculating on the meaning behind every movement and word. What made these reactions so compelling was the combination of relatability and spectacle. Millions of viewers were captivated not just by the drama itself, but by the human vulnerability it revealed. Harry, a prince trained in centuries of royal protocol, had allowed his frustration to surface in a way that was both raw and relatable. Colbert, a master of timing and humor, had managed the situation with composure that many admired. The interplay of these factors created a perfect storm of audience engagement. Viewers felt both empathy and fascination, amusement and suspense. Interestingly, reactions varied depending on cultural and generational context. Younger viewers, accustomed to viral content and real-time reactions, engaged with memes, GIFs, and humorous commentary, often highlighting Harry's gestures or Colbert's calm and playful ways. Older audiences, more familiar with royal protocol and traditional media narratives, were drawn to the historical significance and the human drama underlying the outburst. The footage bridged demographics, creating a shared experience that transcended typical entertainment boundaries. Critics and commentators also weighed in quickly. Late-night analysts dissected the dynamic between host and guest, focusing on the psychological interplay, power dynamics, and emotional tension. Social media experts created frame-by-frame breakdowns of Harry's expressions, hand movements, and micro-reactions. News outlets framed it as both a royal revelation and a television phenomenon, highlighting the contrast between the leaked behind-the-scenes moments and the polished broadcast. The story became a multi-layered cultural event, engaging audiences on emotional, analytical, and entertainment levels simultaneously. One particularly fascinating element was the emotional range captured in audience reactions. Many viewers reported feeling empathy for Harry's struggle, recognizing the human side behind the royal persona. Others experienced suspense, wondering what would happen next, while still more were entertained by Colbert's ability to maintain calm amidst the storm. It was a rare convergence of emotional engagement, suspense, humor, empathy, and admiration all rolled into a single viewing experience.